Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. And today I'd like to show you how I made this card. This is one that I started out making completely differently and ended up with this design. And this was the original card that I made, and when I made it, I didn't have any of this stuff in the middle on it. I just had a complete panel across here, and I got curious about what it would look like if it was open and you put the cutouts here on the outside and the inside. So I just snipped that piece off and then put a piece of window sheet in, and now I've gone back and done it so that I have the measurements appropriate for this card. So what we need is, this is a top folding card, so we need a piece that is 11 by 4 1/4 scored and folded at 5 1/2. Then we need, let's see, I'm going to have to refer to my notes because there's lots of little pieces here. We need a piece of designer series paper that is 3 1/8 by 1 3/4, and that piece is going to go right there. Then we need another piece of designer series paper that is 1 3/8 by 1 3 1/8 by 1 5/8. Then we need pieces of, this was kind of fun because this is the reverse side of this designer series paper, and so I decided to use these little hearts on this side. So on this designer series paper, we need a piece that is 1 1/2 by 1 3/4 and 1 1/2 by 1 5/8. And those are going to make our pieces that are going to go across the top of the card. Then we need a piece that is 1/2 inch by 1 5/8 and 1/2 inch by 1 3/4 to fit down the middle. And then I have 2 pieces of gold foil to fit right in the middle of those, cut at 1/4 inch by the 1 5/8 and 1 3/4, so that those pieces will make up these pieces here. Then I used my dies, and what I used was this stitched oval die, and I cut out the gold foil, and this is the largest of the stitched circle framelits. Then I used the 4th largest of the plain layering ovals. So you also need a piece of this DSP. I wanted one that had the gold on it and had all of the colors in it to cut out my inner circle. And then you also need a piece that is 4 inches by 3/4 inch, and I put that on the inside. And then we need the dies from the Sale Abration. So let me show you first the paper. This is in the Occasions catalog on page 19, and it is this paper here, Painted with Love Specialty Designer Series paper. And that's where I took my pattern paper from. Then in the Sale Abration catalog on page 17 is this die set right here. One that cuts out Celebrate, one that cuts out You, and one that cuts out Amazing. And then there's a coordinating stamp set that goes with it called Amazing You. And I'm not using the stamp set today, I'm just using these framelits here. And, pardon me, thinlits. And on these are available. If you put in an order of $100, you can get this set for free in Sale Abration. That goes on through the end of March. Okay, so let's just get started and I'll show you how I did this. I first had to cut down my card so that it could accommodate the window. And what I did was I cut 2 pieces off the bottom at 1 3/4 of an inch. So at 1 3/4, and that's now a piece of scrap. And then at 1 3/4 again, that doesn't look straight to me. It might not be. It might need to be trimmed up a bit. Well, we'll see when we go to put it together. All right, so I cut off 2 pieces because I have to cut off enough to have something at the bottom here, and also to have space for my window sheet, and that's the other piece I didn't tell you about. So in window sheet, we need to have a piece that is, let's see, my window sheet is 2 1/4 by 4 1/4. So basically it has to go the width of the card, and then it has to be 2 1/4 long to fit in between this and give you sufficient area to glue down and still make up a full card front. So that's what that piece is. In fact, we're going to start with that. So I'm going to bring in my silicone mat, and I'm going to very carefully take my snail. And I would not suggest that you use a dot adhesive for this part. You could use, I suppose, tear and tape, but I found that this, the Stampin' Up! Snail adhesive works just fine. And what I did was I took and set the snail down roughly half of the snail width against the edge of the card. So very carefully laying down about half of the width of the snail, and that's where your silicone mat comes in, because your adhesive won't stick to the silicone mat. Okay, then taking this piece and setting it down here so that it is even from side to side and covers the snail. And because I didn't use a dot adhesive, the snail is barely visible. And, oh, got a little speckle under there. And adhesive on this window sheet is very troublesome. So you want to get this so that that sticks down. I'm going to see if I can coax that little spot off of there. Yeah, I think I can. But on the inside of my finished card, what I'll show you is I didn't have to back this piece because I didn't think the snail showed enough to make a difference. Very, very light piece. You could cut a piece that would cover this with the white cardstock and put that in place on the back side of this. I didn't think it was bad enough to show, and I used snail adhesive on this, and I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so now we have to make our card full length again. So I'm going to take one of those pieces that we cut off at 1 3/4 here, and get that so that it'll fit right down on top of here. So again, I'm going to come down this piece, and I'm going to lay my snail down so that it is roughly half on and half off, and lay down my adhesive here on that. Then I'm going to stand this up so that I know it matches the bottom of this card exactly. And I'm going to then push that into place and I should have a perfect card front with nothing showing around the back or the sides. And if you did get a little something because you didn't lay it down exactly right, you could always snip that off. But there you have your card front now, all ready to go for our card base. I mean, all ready to go for the making of this card. Okay, so next we need to put the layers on the top and bottom of these pieces. So I'm going to start with the smaller one, and what I'm going to do is dry fit this on here so that I've got the same border around all 3 sides on this side, and lay that down here until I'm really happy with that. Then I'm going to lay this piece down here so that it creates a similar border on this end. And I'm going to put some adhesive down on this end, then put this back so that I'm got my border straight. Then take my adhesive end, and you have to be careful what end you put it on because this is directional. We don't want our hearts upside down. So I'm going to move that into place, recreate my border here, and adhere those 2 pieces together. And there we go. So now I have that piece done. Now I need to do the same thing with these 2 pieces. So I'm going to put some snail down on the back of my gold foil slim little piece here, and I'm going to adhere it down the center of this piece so that it is centered. I can see a little stray edge here. Just going to nip away. Okay, now this piece I want to cover the seam here, but in order to get it so that it comes up in exactly the same pace at the top and the bottom without doing too much craziness to measure, what I decided to do was, once I put my snail on this piece here, what I decided to do was place it so that it's mostly on this piece. So just slightly over the edge of this piece, and then I'll put the top piece in exactly the same place, and it should look perfectly symmetrical. And there we go. That's my piece all ready to go now on the bottom of my card, and that's what I'm going to do. So once you've got all of your little pieces, this card isn't really difficult. It's, oops, I'm out of snail. So, and I definitely want this kind of snail. So I'm going to just put my refill back in here. I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm going to continue putting my snail on this piece here. And then I'm going to set this in place. And my border should be perfect all the way around. And put that piece into place. Now we're going to repeat this whole process for the top. So here's all of my little pieces for the top. I'm going to dry fit this one in with margin. I'm going to put some adhesive along this edge of my heart DSP. Set that into place here so that my margin is good top to bottom and side to side. And there we go. There's that piece. Now, once again, I'm going to take my little gold piece and I'm going to set it in place on this piece of Melon Mambo. All right, and then put some adhesive on this. And once again, in order to make that match, I'm going to come right to the edge of this DSP and move it just ever so slightly over. And that should match and line up with the bottom. And it does. And so now I'm going to put my adhesive on this piece and put it into place here on the front of my card. And there we go. There's my divided front cover, if you will. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is and I've already cut out my gold foil piece and my circle that I needed for the top of this. And I'm going to put some adhesive on the back of this all over, because I want this to stick down really well on my piece of gold foil. And I'm going to center this on my piece of gold foil. There we go. And then I'm going to sort of dry fit this in here because I want this to be completely stable across the bottom. So that has to do with why I'm putting this on here. Otherwise, I would have had to put a much larger piece of window sheet in here because this, as you can see, could easily separate from that. That's the only thing holding this bottom piece on. So I'm putting this in place right in here, and that is going to stabilize my card from top to bottom and hide my U on the inside and just add some more decoration. And you have to decide how you want this in there. And I would like the gold to show on that inner piece. And that looks to be about even top to bottom. So if that's the case, then I'm going to need to put some snail along here just to get it tacked down, and then I'll show you how else I'm going to adhere it to the inside. And then put that into place. And then what we're going to do with this part that's sticking off is we're just going to trim that right off. So I'm going to take my snips and I'm going to go right along the edge of the card here and snip that piece off. Okay. Then on the inside, I'm going to take a couple of glue dots. And for this, you have to be really careful because you don't want to get any of the glue dot material on your window sheet or you end up with a real sticky mess. So I'm going to just pick up this piece here and put that glue dot down and secure that. And I'm going to do the same thing on the top. I'm going to pick up this piece and I'm going to put the glue dot down inside there so that it's inside the circle, and that stabilizes and makes my card front stronger. Then, just for good measure, I'm going to add 2 more glue dots on these ends as well. So I'm picking up my circle, and on these you have to be careful because you're real close to the edge. And I'm going to do this one. In fact, it probably wouldn't hurt to have these fold in half, but I can see right where I'm placing them. Now that circle isn't going any place, and the bottom of that card is now nice and stable. So there we have our card front basically done. Then I cut out my 2 thinlits here out of a 1-inch strip of Melon Mambo. So you need some Melon Mambo, scrap, in order to be able to cut out your pieces here. Now, this one I want to sit across here. Isn't that pretty? It just kind of brings the whole thing together. That color picks up here, picks up here, picks up this, inside this, and I think it just makes the card look really complete. Now, what I told you I did on this is I did use just plain old snail adhesive because it doesn't really show from the front of the card. So I just carefully put some snail adhesive down on some of my letters here so that I would have some on each letter to stick to the front of my card. And then tried to get the stray bits out of there. And then very carefully set this up so I had the best chance of getting this straight on the front of my card. And centered from left to right. And there I have my Celebrate on the front of the card. I just love this thing. It's just so festive looking. And then on the inside, now you could use liquid glue or you could use fine point glue. You could use anything on this, but I had my snail right here, so I did that. And here's where I have my circle, so I know my U needs to go right in here. Celebrate You. And then, let's see, I need one more. Oops, I didn't cut that piece. Okay, so we need one little piece of this card, this designer series paper, 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to cut my strip 3/4 of an inch, and I want it to have some of the gold and several of the pieces of the colors on it. And I want that to be 4 inches. In fact, I'd like to have some of that purple on it. So I'm going to cut it a little bit longer and then come back and trim it to 4 inches from this side. And that way I get some of the purple in there as well. There we go. So now I've got my piece that's 3/4 of an inch by 4 inches. And I'm just going to add my snail down here. And I'm going to set that along the bottom of the card here. Now, the way this card works, and that is the project for the day, lots of little pieces, but not difficult, mostly just lots of steps, is that Celebrate You could be for anything. It could be congratulations on achieving something. It could be happy birthday. This could be Valentine's Day with the little hearts. It could be just about anything. And so I love the versatility of this little message. And so that is the project for the day. Let's see, there's just one little additional thing I did, and that was I put some additional little embellishments. I put some of these little gold enamel dots here on the card, sort of dotted around, and I think I added 3 or 4 of them here. I think 3. I like odd numbers, and so there we go. We have 3, and that is the project for today. So thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do appreciate it, and you can purchase any of these items on my website, www.lbedinger.stampinup.net, and you can get this wonderful thinlet set, and this will carry over to the new catalog, so we're guaranteed of that. And so you can get this wonderful Celebrate You thinlet set when you spend $100 on Stampin' Up, and then this could be your selection for your free item. So, yep, the only way you can get this one is for free. And so, and if you don't already have a Stampin' Up demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator. And or you could join my team. And as you've heard me say, there are special deals all through the end of March for joining Stampin' Up. You get the way it works with me, because I give you some additional material $40 worth of material. Stampin' Up! Gives you the $125 for the $99, and then you also can select for free 2 additional stamp sets from Stampin' Up! So it's a wonderful time of the year to join, and I'd love to have you on my team. So thanks very much again for watching, and I'll be back soon with more cards and more projects. Bye.